I thank the Minister. It being 4 p.m, private member statements are interrupted for the consideration of the electronic petition signed by 20,000 or more persons listed on the business paper, which was regarding Central Coast Council lodged by the member for Wyong. Before we commence with the debate, I want to acknowledge a number of members in the Cooper, and I understand there will be some others coming to the Northern Gallery. I'll welcome them, those: Susan Green, Phil Hall, Cheryl Ellis, Andrew Kelso, Alison Day, Aurora Walker, Tom Colosimo, Rob Manker, Maureen Boyce, Terry O'Brien, Marianne Hamilton, Philip Mason, Nicole Faulkner, Glenn Brewster, Anne Christensen and Eric Manklow. Before we commence the debate and for the benefit of the public, I'd like to take the opportunity to explain the process and rationale behind this unique debate. It is unique because it enables the public to directly bring their concerns to the attention of the House. The intent of this procedure is that the petition debate will start with a speech from a member, which in most cases will be the member who lodged the petition, followed by up to 4 other members, followed by a minister in response, and to conclude the debate, the first speaker will speak in reply. After all members have spoken, the House will vote on the question, that the House take note of this petition. This question will in most cases be determined on the voices and be passed. However, if this is challenged by a member, it may proceed to a division where the bells are rung and members vote on the motion to take note of the petition by sitting on the appropriate side of the House. I will just remind those guests in the gallery that it is disorderly to applaud or make any noises from the gallery. I ask that you listen to the debate in silence. The question is that the House take note of the petition, and I call the member for Wyong.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I'd like to start by acknowledging those people who've made the trip down today in quite inclement weather. And I hear there was also an accident on the M1 today as well, so that's not good. I'd like to congratulate and thank all the people who signed the petition, but I'd also like to recognise Susan Green and Marianne Hamilton for having the wherewithal to get this petition going. When the petition closed, 21,422 people had signed the petition, and I know if it had gone for longer, that number would have been quite higher. The hurt and anger of Central Coast ratepayers has been pronounced. At the moment, our community is being inflicted with higher rates proposed of 10 to 15%, and that's on top of rate harmonisation. So for some communities, that'll be up to 43%. Reduction to services, staff cuts, sale of public land and assets, and the sting in the tail of having no new infrastructure, and let me stress that, no new infrastructure for up to 10 years. Meaning that even if the government at federal or state level give the council a grant, that money would have to be returned. Absolutely incredible. Not surprisingly, residents want to know how this came about. How did this happen? They see this not only as a failure of the governing body, but they know that the system of governance at every level has failed them. That is why they wanted a judicial or special commission of inquiry. They wanted the investigation to be free of government and politics. They wanted it to be independent. They required people to be compelled to give evidence if necessary, including current and former staff, but especially the chief financial officers. And they wanted terms of reference that examined all facets of this mess, including the Fit for the Future process, the role of the Transition Administrator Ian Reynolds, the role of current councillors and staff, the former CEO, the role of ARIC, the role of internal and external auditors, the real cost of the merger process, and the role of the Office of Local Government. Everything should be on the table, nothing should be left out. And we must remember this petition is in 2 parts. The second part was a request that the Minister for Local Government delay any application by the Council to IPART for a special rate variation of 10 or 15% and any decision on the sale of council assets until residents can consider the findings of the judicial inquiry and its recommendations. So let's be clear, there's 2 parts to this. The Central Coast community feel they have been forced to bear the brunt of this disaster. They feel ignored, they feel frustrated, they feel persecuted, and they are rightly angry. They are being asked to pay more for less, and they never even had a say in the merger process. There was never a ballot, their submissions were in the main ignored, and now they're being asked to pay in so many ways. I take this opportunity to acknowledge that the Minister for Local Government is restrained by the Local Government Act, and that she has been working through the processes available to her, including the most recent decision to hold a public inquiry. The Minister has been prepared to discuss issues with me, and I appreciate that, Minister, as had the Administrator, Mr Dick Person. I appreciate that our discussions have been frank and honest. Don't always agree, but I've been able to put my case, and I thank you for that. But sadly, only one person with the power to intervene and recommend a special commission of inquiry, the Premier, Gladys Berejiklian, has been missing in action. Good leadership is about recognising that some issues have to be elevated, not just to find answers for one community, but to avail learners for the whole state. There are multiple factors that led to this, factors which other local government areas are also facing, but the Premier has failed to demonstrate the required leadership, and in doing so has failed the people of the Central Coast. It's not too late, Premier, to stand up and do the right thing. We do have a public inquiry. We have the terms of reference, which seem to be focused on the governing body. Minister, can you provide the Central Coast community with some strong assurances today by committing that the third term of reference is considered broadly to include the issues I raised specifically earlier? The role of executives and senior managers, the regulatory regimes and the oversight responsibilities of OLG and IPART, the audit office processes, ARIC, amalgamation processes including Fit for the Future, development of council structure and the internal restructuring and contracts.
Thank the member for Wyong. The question is that the House take note of the petition.
Madam Deputy Speaker.
Call the member for Terrigal.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I also want to thank those who've made the trip from the Central Coast in these very inclement conditions and welcome you to the New South Wales Parliament. And I want to start my contribution on this very important issue by saying that as public officials we have a responsibility to ensure that when we are dealing with these sorts of things, particularly when there is a high level of community concern, that we stick to the facts and that we do not create hysteria. Those are not just my words, Madam Deputy Speaker, but they're also the member for Wyong's words. He said exactly that in this place on the 18th of February 2021. Central Coast Council is in an incredibly serious financial situation, Madam Deputy Speaker. Let's not forget that 7 months ago today, on the 6th of October 2020, Central Coast Council announced it was experiencing serious financial situation and faces an immediate liquidity issue. There was no prior notice of this, Madam Deputy Speaker. It was terrible news dumped on a very shocked community and, of course, a government. Then on the 20th of October 2020, the Council announced that it could not even pay its own staff for that week. And I thank the local government minister who's behind me for immediately advancing $6.2 million of payments so that staff could receive their weekly wages. Then on the 30th of October 2020, the councillors were suspended and an administrator was appointed to get to the bottom of the $565 million of debt. Madam Deputy Speaker, Labor have spent every single day since trying to blame everyone but themselves for this financial situation. But let me ask, did the New South Wales Government authorise for Council to illegally spend restricted funds? Did the New South Wales Government employ hundreds of extra staff after the amalgamation when the exact opposite should have happened? Did the New South Wales Government spend thousands of dollars, if not millions, fighting development applications in the Land and Environment Court? Did the New South Wales Government spend over $50 million on a new IT system? Did the New South Wales Government give the Mayor and councillors a pay rise in the middle of a pandemic? Did the New South Wales Government tell the Labor and Independent councillors to vote time and time again to conceal the financial situation from the community? And, Madam Deputy Speaker, did the amalgamation cause the council's financial situation? And I quote, "The amalgamation did not contribute to the disaster," and that is what the member for Wyong said again in this place on the 18th of February 2021. And in the words of the Council's administrator, there is absolutely no evidence that the financial collapse of Central Coast Council was caused by the merger. I'm a ratepayer, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I join with the hundreds of thousands of other ratepayers across the Central Coast in expressing my anger at Council's financial situation. What we are witnessing is the largest financial disaster of any council in Australian history. I welcome the opportunity to speak on this petition, of course, because it allows me to correct a few of the non-factual claims that Labor have repeatedly been making. There is some very important information that the people who signed this judicial inquiry petition have never been told. Under the Local Government Act, the Minister, the only option she has to prevent the councillors returning is for the Local Government Minister to establish a public inquiry, which she has done. It would have been reckless to allow these councillors who presided over the financial situation to return and wreak even more havoc. If a judicial inquiry was held, the councillors would have been allowed to return. As part of the public inquiry under Part 2 of Section 348 of the Local Government Act, the Independent Commissioner has the same powers, authorities, protections and immunities as that of a Royal Commission. These include the power to summon witnesses to attend and give evidence on oath or by affirmation. 2, the power to require the production of documents and to the council or others. 3, the power to deal with contempt. 4, the power to restrict public access to evidence that is regarded as confidential in nature. Any evidence collected by the Independent Commissioner at a public inquiry can be later used in court or in the Independent Commission Against Corruption. But if a judicial inquiry was held, any evidence collected would be inadmissible in court or in the ICAC. For Labor members to claim that a public inquiry is a toothless tiger is utter rubbish, Madam Deputy Speaker. 2 weeks ago, the member for the entrance was incredibly deceitful to the Central Coast community when he said publicly, this is a departmental inquiry. This could not be further from the truth, Madam Deputy Speaker. A public inquiry is the same powers and provisions as a royal commission. As the member for Wyong has said, we have a responsibility to stick to the facts and not hysteria. If Labor members continue to oppose this public inquiry, I would ask, what do they have against Rosalind McCulloch? Why would they not trust Rosalind McCulloch, a highly esteemed figure who has over 30 years of legal experience? Commissioner McCulloch has been given immense powers in her role over the public inquiry. Commissioner McCulloch has immense experience in the legal practice and local government, and Commissioner McCulloch has been given terms of reference that are as broad as possible. This will allow her to conduct an open, transparent and detailed public inquiry. So the Labor members should stop spreading myth-truths as we saw with the member for the interest last week. It is not a departmental inquiry. It is an open and transparent public inquiry which has had the same reach as that of a Royal Commission. It couldn't be any more straightforward. And I also want to thank the Local Government Minister for doing the right thing by the Central Coast Council and calling a public inquiry and suspending the councillors.
I thank the member for Terrigal. The question is that the House take note of the petition. I call the member for the entrance.
Thanks, Speaker. Speaker, firstly, let me thank the Speaker's office for arranging for the people from the Central Coast who are attending today to be in the chamber. I appreciate these special arrangements that have been made under the current health restrictions, and I want to give my regards to all the Central Coast people who are viewing in today. Speaker, I say this to my community. The Premier has let you down. Gladys Berejiklian could have established a judicial inquiry, a special commission of inquiry established under its own act and overseen by a judge in the same way as the Ruby Princess inquiry was conducted, all costs borne by the state. The Premier has refused to do so. On February 26, she said in answer to a question from NBN News, I think the community doesn't necessarily want review on review on review. They want to see action. They want to see fairness. No inquiry from this Premier. But I'll get back to fairness in a moment. Instead, we have a public inquiry established under the Local Government Act under Section 438U, a commissioner who is well qualified but with nowhere near the authority of a judge in these matters, and terms of reference so narrow that the people of the Central Coast are right to say they are not getting what they ask for. There's also provision under the Local Government Act to require council to pay for the inquiry instead of the local government department. So my first question to the Minister for her reply is this: will you broaden the terms of reference of the inquiry to include amalgamation policy and all the other things the petitioners have asked for in their petition? And I'd also welcome your comments on whether the Central Coast community will have to foot the bill for this inquiry through their council, or will your department pay for the inquiry? Speaker, the elephant in the room in this matter is amalgamation. It's right for the community to ask about the impact of amalgamation on the Central Coast. When the state government announced its amalgamation policy in 2016, Premier Mike Baird said there'd be huge benefits. The reality has been very different. Amalgamated councils across the state are now struggling with the consequences of dealing with this policy and the lack of support from the state government. In dealing with these challenges, councils in the Sydney metropolitan region are proposing rate increases of up to 40%. So Central Coast Council is not alone in seeking a rate increase to deal with the results of the state government's poorly executed amalgamation policy. Council staff have estimated that the cost of amalgamating Wyong Shire Council and Gosford City Council are in the order of $100 million plus. But where was the state government's support? The state government provided only $10 million in direct support for amalgamation of councils across the state, no matter what their size, no matter what their population, no matter what their capacity to fund the amalgamation of their councils. That's all anybody got. The state government also funded a whole bunch of projects under the Stronger Communities Fund, and on the coast, 92 of these projects were funded. And I haven't got time to deal with them in detail, but I refer people who are interested to the question and answer paper number 94 and the answer to my question 4614. Have a look at that. Have a look where those projects have been funded on the Central Coast. Most of them are in the seat of Terrigal. Most of them are in the southern part of the Central Coast. That's Liberal fairness. That's Liberal fairness preferred to by the Premier. Partial funding on the Central Coast favouring Liberal Party electorates. The elected councillors, I want to say a few words about them because they've come in for a bunch of criticism. However, I would say to my community, there are many examples in my electorate where the actions of the elected councillors ensured that the community's wishes and will prevailed over the desires of bureaucrats. And here's a couple of examples. The Ourimbah Master Plan. The Ourimbah Master Plan staff wanted four stories across the suburb of Ourimbah. That was stopped by elected councillors voting together. At Wyoming, Allen Davidson Oval, council staff were willing to approve a mobile phone tower there. It was stopped by the elected councillors. The Workers' Memorial at Ourimbah, recognised and protected by resolution of elected councillors. Where was the government's representative during all this? He spent more time criticising council than he did supporting it. More time than, and his government spent more time criticising it than supporting it. Here's what the administrator said about the member for Terrigal. I am disappointed, and I quote, "I am disappointed, however, that despite personal briefings on the extent of the financial crisis, you have never offered a single idea or proposal on how to deal with a crisis other than opposing a rate increase." I end my comment.
Minister.
I want to thank those who come here today. The government is not satisfied because they don't control Central Coast Council. They want to turn it into an arm of government.
Order.
Speaker.
The question is that the House take note of the petition. I call the member for Kiama.
Well, thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. There you have it, a defence of the Labor Green majority by the member for the entrance. And we know he's defending them because the way in which this particular petition has been framed is so that a different form of inquiry could be permitted under the local government, under different auspices. They want a special commission of inquiry rather than the Local Government Act, which establishes quite clearly the provisions for an inquiry. Now, why have they done this? They've done this because if you had a special commission of inquiry, rather than the Local Government Act, which would stop the councillors from taking their seats, they'd be able to take them right up again and continue to spend. And what they have done... Oh, not true, you've said. Not true. Well, you better go and have a look at the Local Government Act. You better go and have a look at the Local Government Act because he has deliberately misled his constituents. Now, I listened to that verbal diarrhea that just came right across the chamber there. You talked about the Commission of Inquiry, the public inquiry, and you said that no one could raise any other matters. Point 3, here's the terms of reference, any other matters. So you've just lied to your constituents. You lied about the fact that these people will be back in their council chairs. I'm sure if the Shadow Attorney General was writing these features, he wouldn't have allowed this dribble to take place. You are misleading your constituents.
Stop the clock. You're rising on a point of order.
Madam Speaker, it has been in this place noted that we do not use unparliamentary language, and we know the term that the Minister just used is unparliamentary, and I would ask you not to, ask him not to use that term.
I might refer. I appreciate your explanation. I was actually sitting in the chair yesterday where there was a lot of unparliamentary language. In fact, the same word. I will uphold the point of order, but.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Kaima, restart the clock.
Well, Madam Speaker, and they're continuing to mislead their constituents because they're making out as if this inquiry is going to be somehow exposing what's going on at the council, whilst at the same time putting the people that are responsible for this mess back in their jobs. Now, I'm all for ensuring that we have
Order.
democratic representation. But what you have done, your representatives, your party's people, have led this council to a more than $500 million deficit as a result of your profligate and outrageous spending. I mean, this is a council that when we were throwing money at them, grant after
Interjecting is
grant, they couldn't
unparliamentary.
even
The
properly
member will be heard in
comply.
silence.
And yet you want to return these incompetent Labor Green councillors
Member for
back
Gosford,
to
you'll get
their
your turn.
seats. And we know that when it comes to local government incompetence, this runs like a river through the Labor Party. It doesn't matter whether it's Wollongong Council
Order.
or Shell Harbour Council or even this Parliament. They cannot help themselves when it comes
Order.
to local government profligate spending.
Member
And
for Shell
I
Harbour.
noticed that the mistruths continued because I had a flick through the interim report as well as the final report that's been tabled. And as much as I do admire often the contributions for the member for Wyong, he got it wrong when he said that the mergers have had something to do with this situation. In fact, the first recommendation of the administrator was
You
that that
have a
was
chance to
blatantly
reply.
not true.
What's the legacy
Blatantly
issue?
not
Member
true.
for Wyong, you're on a call. Member for Gosford.
Isn't it amazing how they want to try and wash their hands? There's a collective Pontius Pilates
Member for
over
Stevens, you're on
here
a call.
that as if they have nothing to do with them. Why aren't you condemning the behaviour of these councillors?
have.
Why do you want to put them back in their jobs? Why do you want
Member
these
for
people
Terrigal.
continuing to mean
Member
that the
for
people of the
Terrigal.
Central Coast will have to continue to pay back this irresponsible
Order.
debt and
Order.
deficit
Stop
that you
the
are
clock.
ladening the people
Stop
of the
the
Central
clock.
Coast?
Minister, resume your seat. You're rising on a point of order. Member for Maitland.
There's actually two. One is that the Minister should be actually addressing his comments
I
to
have
the
asked him
Chair,
to do that.
And
Thank
the other
you.
one is 74, and you do have the capacity as the Speaker to intervene when members are being quarrelsome and making statements like that.
I've
And
heard
he is-
enough. I've
he
heard
is
enough. Thank you.
engaging
I
that.
will uphold the first point of order, but not the second. The Minister, I will remind you to direct your comments through the Chair.
Madam
Restart
Speaker,
the
I
clock.
will. But where have all these so-called doyens of financial responsibility been for the last 3 years? You knew this was going on. You said nothing about what was going on.
Order.
You left your communities in the lurch.
Order.
You let them run up this debt.
Stop
This
the
is
clock.
on New
Minister,
South Wales
Minister,
Labor
resume
and
your
your
seat.
representatives. This is all on you.
Madam Speaker,
No, I can't hear you because there's too much noise on that side. I'll wait till silence and listen to your point of order.
Madam Speaker, the Minister is quite
What is your
clear-
point of order?
He's clearly flouting
No,
your
I
role.
no, I believe he was
I'll
attempting to
speak-
direct to the. I'll remind him again. Thank you.
And he
Resume your
continues to
seat.
courtesy to
I've heard
sit
what
down.
you've had to say. Resume your seat. Minister, I will remind you to direct your comments through the chair.
Madam Speaker, this
But I also remind those on the other side, interjections are unparliamentary. Minister.
Madam Speaker, this is all on the Labor Party. This is their legacy to the people of the Central Coast. It is financial mismanagement. They couldn't even spend the money that we were handing over to them in order to ensure that their community benefited. When you've got hard-working people like the Parliamentary Secretary for the Central Coast securing grant after grant, and you couldn't even hand out the money. Oh, I wouldn't talk, member for Shell Harbour. I wouldn't talk if I were you, because
Member for
Labor's
Shell
majority
Harbour.
was
No
sacked
point
because of
order.
your
The
behaviour on
objections
Shell
are
Harbour
coming
Council.
to-
Wollongong
Resume your
sacked,
seat,
Shell Harbour
Member for
sacked.
Maitland. No, Minister, you have the call.
This is called government in denial.
Minister, you have the call.
Oh, sorry. Madam Speaker, and again, I would just remind them that by calling for this very different form of inquiry, that would mean these councillors that are responsible for this mess
Member for
would go
Wyong.
back into their positions. What did the administrator say in his report? The administrator said in his report there was no attempt to provide any financial restitution for the mess that they were creating. This would have continued to go on. You want these people back in their chairs. The people of the Central Coast deserve a responsible council, one that's going to spend appropriately and do the right thing by their communities. This council is not it.
Madam Speaker.
The question is that the House take note of the date. I'll call the member for Gosford.
Madam Speaker, this is absolutely outrageous. And I would like to thank the people who've travelled down from the Central Coast today, as well as the 21,000 people, more than who signed the petition on the New South Wales Parliament calling on a judicial inquiry to investigate what the member for Wyong doesn't realise are very deep-seated problems that lie behind both the Wyong Shire and the Gosford City Council and our forced merger, the administrative processes, the flaws in the operational systems that have led to the financial debacle that Central Coast people are now living within for the next 10+ years. Madam Speaker, while the Minister for Local Government, and I respect the Minister, was absolutely blindsided by what happened on the Central Coast, despite regular audits, I must say, by the Auditor-General's Office and the likes of PricewaterhouseCoopers, she needs the Premier's support. Today in this Parliament, the Premier needs to step up and take power to call a judicial inquiry to make sure that those terms of reference are broad enough to dig deep into the 20 years of pain that we have been living through. The member of Kiama doesn't realise this. The member of Terrigal knows quite well that councils on the Central Coast have got a long history that we need to have there on the table with transparency so we can have trust in the financial situation and investment in our community moving forward. And, Madam Speaker, this is not just for our council, and I note that the Shadow Minister for Local Government was in the Parliament earlier, he is. This is for councils across New South Wales who have been forced to merge by this government, who are now also in dire circumstances and who now, many of whom have applications to IPART for a rate rise to pay not for their day-to-day costs that they were living with normally, but for the ongoing costs that they've been paying of the merger and the repercussions of staff and the lack of scales of whatever they need to put things together to make it cheaper for the people of these councils. The Premier forced these councils to merge and is now backpedalling, knowing that they are not creating these savings and currently allowing the public inquiry to move forward with very limited framework that's not designed to create the long-term solutions we need. Premier, it's not just for coasties, it's for the future of local government. And ratepayers across New South Wales who are now facing an harmonisation rate rise, or should I say a liberal merger tax. And in some places in New South Wales, this is a 58% increase. We're going to be hit hard on the coast, but people in regional and rural councils are going to be hit even harder.
Order.
This is also on behalf of councils across regional and rural New South Wales, including ours, that are facing new accounting systems and depreciation, which is going to change their accounting structures, and councillors and people who work in the admin are living with fear of what happens to the future financial situation. The Auditor-General announced on the judgment of 3 councils that this amalgamation process was working. The Auditor-General's also audited our council 3 times and none of these problems have appeared, and so has Pricewaterhouse. No problems have been flagged. Premier, the only reason we know that our council was going into the negative and spending those restricted funds and that were left off the financial statement that was given to councillors because we were hit by bushfires, COVID and then by floods. But this we know has been going on possibly for 10, maybe 2 decades in the Gosford Council alone. This is way more than a superficial look on what the councillors in the recent council was making, the decision making. I'd also like to point out in this place, and remember and revise to the member for Kiama and also the member for Terrigal, it's not $560 million worth of debt, it's $317 million debts that we inherited as coasties from those 2 councils that shed staff before we were going in there. They flogged off a whole bunch of our assets, including our Gosford parking facility, and have dumped this on the administrator, who's then spent $50 million on a useless administration system. Premier, we need your help. Mr Dick Person said it's the hardest job he's ever done. He said the backlog was out of control. He said the amalgamation is far from over. We've got Mr Farmer who's arrived, who has to buckle down inside a broken organisation and try and patch it together. We've got 10 years of no development moving forward with any asset investment in our community, and we haven't got the Premier in this room. We ask again for the $70 million cost to cover the cost of the mergers for our community.
Order.
So we now, the threat to us, Madam Speaker, is the massive sell-off of public land. I've been on the phone with concerned community members from across the coast. Madam Speaker, this needs more than whatever inquiry they're offering. It needs a deep, hard look.
Thank the member for Gosford.
Thank you.
Order. Can you come to the lectern?
I seek leave to make a short contribution.
The member is seeking leave to make a contribution. Is leave granted? No, leave is not granted. No. Order. The Minister in reply.
Thank you, Madam Acting Speaker. I think we just sort of all need to settle down about this issue and
Order.
and express our concern for the communities of the Central Coast. The communities of the Central
Order. Member. Order.
The communities of the Central Coast have been severely hurt by what's been happening up on the Central Coast. And I want to in particular thank the member for Wyong, who's had some intelligent conversations with me and has expressed concern about what's been going on for some time now. Unlike his Labor colleagues, he has talked to me with interest. And in particular the member for Terrigal, who's been expressing concern about the Central Coast Council for quite some time. He's taken interest in his community, and I thank the community who actually signed this petition, because it's absolutely necessary that we get the message, even though we had the message very loud and clear last year when, of course, Central Coast Council came to me 2 days before their wages were due, or they had to pay their workers, and said they couldn't pay their workers, and we had to bail out the council. So there are some serious issues that we know need addressing. 2 periods of administration, and the administrator made a recommendation for a public inquiry. Unfortunately, there's misunderstanding on both sides. A public inquiry will have all the powers of a Royal Commission, the power to compel witnesses, to discover documents within council. It will involve the public. You can make submissions to the public inquiry. Unfortunately, I think the terminology of a judicial inquiry is somewhat misleading. Judicial inquiry is not really a thing. It's a kind of inquiry. I suppose you meant Special Commission of Inquiry. But that's presided over by a judge. This is presided over by a very eminent barrister, Rosalind McCulloch. And I think you've undermined her in your debate in the lead up to this, and your comments in the media, especially the member for the entrance, by saying this was just a departmental inquiry. It's not that at all. You said that, and this is not that at all. This Commissioner is about to undertake a very far-reaching inquiry into what happened. We all need the answers. You need the answers. We all need the answers. But most importantly, the community need the answers as to why decisions were made to continue with profligate spending in the Central Coast, unfettered spending, secret meetings, confidential meetings when they didn't need to be, shutting out the community from those decisions, why they continued not to take advantage of the opportunities available to them by the amalgamation process. Why did they not take advantage of that? Why did they continue to increase their staff numbers? There were so many serious challenges this council faced, but chose not to face up to them. So now we're faced with a public inquiry where all of the community will have the opportunity to have input into that. Again, I thank the member for Wyong, who's been utterly reasonable throughout all of these debates, and of course the member for Terrigal, who's continued to show passionate interest in his community. Oh, why don't you go away?
The question is that the House take note of the petition. I call the member for Wyong in reply.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'm pleased, Minister, that you've given that indication that it will be wide-reaching. When people read the terms of reference, we thought that it inferred that, but now it's on the record. It's very, very important. And I also had solace from your comments that you made in the media where you said the same thing, so I won't have to repeat them. So thank you for that. Look, what I need to say is that this is a really serious issue. This is actually going to hurt people financially. It's going to hurt the community. And we on this side have been focused on that. We've said from the start, everything should be on the table. We have excluded nobody from scrutiny. So some of the things about protection rackets and all that is just utter rubbish. We've said that every single thing should be on the table. Very, very important that every issue is looked at. Unfortunately, the member for Kiama brought the whole tone of the place down. Not unusual, but he insulted our community, and I'm really angry about this, Gareth. I'm really angry about this because it was the community. These people up here wrote the petition. It wasn't a political petition. It was a petition from the community. It's a petition
Member
from the
for
community, and you've undermined
Member
that.
for
So shame on you. Shame on you. This issue is going to affect our community for the next 10 years. We have to make sure that this inquiry not only looks into what happened before, but sets us up for a future where we're not back in another 5 years or 10 years going through the same thing. On the Central Coast, we've been through council after council with scandal and corruption and findings against them, and it's not good enough. Our community deserves better than that, and that's why they want answers. So hopefully, Minister, we'll get those answers, and we'll certainly be scrutinising every step of the way.
The question is that the House take note of the petition. I'll put the question. All of that opinion say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The debate on the 20,000 signature electronic petition on Central Coast Council having concluded, I thank the members of the public listening to the debate, both within the Cooper Gallery and online.
Okay. I just want to